Where would you like to pick up from circling?
Well, we had quite the interesting conversation yesterday based on the tool we've been putting together to help people dig into their origin story of their business. And I thought the exercise was very informative, and we've alluded to this before. We've even sessions on the Tuesday workshop about it before, where we've told people you should do this. We've gone through similar exercises, but now that we're formulating our own and the directions that it took yesterday, um, that was that's probably the most. It's probably one of the most exciting things that I think you and I are working on at the moment. Certainly from what you said, and I'm now speaking for myself, saying that I'm enjoying it, and I'm sort of just because you are your own target client in a sense. I'm I'm thinking if I'm having this much brain activity and energy, if I'm getting this much energy from doing it, imagine what it's going to do once we start deploying it for clients, and they begin to realize, oh, now I forgot why I do what I do, or I knew it. Um, Kinetically, meaning I know why I must do something, but I don't have the language to tell you. I couldn't, if you asked me why I do it, I'd say because it needs to be done. But I couldn't tell you why it needs to be done because I don't have the language. And now you do, right? And when we have language on something, it just spikes the degree of ownership we can take over it. So, um, so that's what's brewing up for me. But of course, I'm open.
Yeah. So you're talking about the inventory, kind of it's a kind of an inventory. It's really just a number of questions to uncover or discover, perhaps. Um, the, what do we got here? I feel like I should put it on the screen, but that won't work for most people. So for each so basically looking about your high points and low points, and then what you learned from how they affected you, along with pivotal stories, the ones that keep you together. I was thinking the other day that I started writing the preface to the second book of the relaunch, remake, whatever, of what could be, because I don't like the title, and some of the stories have changed. I have an idea of how I want to rewrite that. And in the preface, um, I talked about how the stories that were pivotal for me before, some of them still are. They were relevant, and they are relevant now. Some things have changed, and the person, even though I was the same person then, but you understand what I mean. The person I was then doesn't feel that today's person doesn't deal with the same things in the same way as the other person. I felt them differently. And so I addressed the idea that I had feelings around some of these things here and they're relevant, but let's update them. Let's continue along the journey. And that's what I think of when I think of these stories, that when we ask good questions about the stories in our lives, we can really discover what moves us, motivates us, and what's meaningful.
Yeah. Our friend Sam Feeney, emissary author. I don't think this is his quote, but I've heard him say it. That's why I'm attributing it to him. He said, "If we want better answers in our life, we need to ask better questions." And you say, "Well, what exactly does that mean?" And the whole purpose of asking a better question is not to. It isn't always so much how it's worded, so much as it is what it provides space for the answerer to come up with. And I think that's what's, you're not asking questions that are particularly like profound or, ooh, nobody's ever worded it quite that way. They're common questions, but it's their placement and it's the context into which you've dropped them, along with the other questions. that really started getting my head spinning in a good way, um, of saying, I can easily conjure up some of what were the top, the best moments so far in my business journey and what have been the worst ones. But then I have to think about, okay, well, what led up to that? Why was it one of the best moments? What did I learn from it? How did it affect the business? And before I can look around, I'm putting language to all these things that I sort of knew but didn't know because I never verbalized them. I never heard myself say it or watched myself type it or thought about. I hadn't had a forum to think holistically, or not holistically is not the right word, but to just think out loud and say to myself, why did that event stand out? What was so special about it? And I can point to things. I can reassemble it from my memory and from various pieces of evidence I might have. But then I have to think about, how did that change me? And just to take it out of the vague and put it into the specifics. I was looking at, one of the worst moments for me was nearly going out of business in 2022, and figuring out that the reason I was nearly going out of business was because I was just not very good with money and never have been by myself. Um, it's not an interesting subject to me, which you would say, why isn't money an interesting subject? Well, I'm sorry, it's just not. I have to force myself to pay attention to it and to think about it. I don't like dealing in numbers and logic. I like dealing in abstract. And I was forced, but then, the follow-up question was really interesting to answer, because you said, how has this changed you? And I realized I have become a very, I don't want to put it in stark terms. I just want to say, much more than I used to, I'm very wary about what I do with money. I'm very wary about giving to charity, because I had a generosity problem. That was part of the struggle, was not that I was a profligate spender. I was a profligate giver. I was like, and then, and I got some bad external advice, took my CPA's advice without having any context or appreciation of why she was giving it to me or what it meant. Didn't realize it was predicated on some assumptions that were incorrect. And so I gave away a tremendous amount of money to the IRS early on that I didn't need to. And, all of these things. And I say, how has that affected me? Well, now I'm a budget hawk. Not an accounting expert, and not a bookkeeping expert, not a CPA. Still don't understand the tax code, not pretending to. But I have forced myself to find people who will teach me step by step in a spreadsheet. This is how you track your numbers. This is how you know how much you have, so you know how much you can put towards the future. And is that situation completely resolved? No, because I still have a big problem on the revenue generation side. But that's a different ball game. The main thing is, with whatever money does come into the business, I now understand way better now how to handle it and what not to do with it than I did 4 years ago.
So many people who experience situations like that are hesitant to share their stories. They're hesitant to courageously share their inventory. I'm hesitant to courageously share my inventory. And it strikes me that many times we look back on these pivotal moments and share them long into the future, so that we can tell people, hey, here's how I resolved it, or here's how I didn't resolve it, but hey, it all worked out fine. Going through it, I think, is a much more challenging place to be, because of the weakness that I think people tend to associate with working through things.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that we do that only I think in certain areas of our lives. We had to pick some and hone in on those, whereas we're perfectly fine being weak in another area. Uh, and, and it's probably all sorts of reasons for that. For our viewers and listeners, I want to draw their attention to some of the questions that we're actually noodling on here. If I can see them on my screen here and you've seen them. Um, and it's really discovery, it's taken from a coaching and consulting discovery process. Uh, it- um, and one of the things I wrote here was, choose for each high point in your business, what led to that high point? How did it change you? How did it affect or change the business? How did it change the individual and how it changed the business are two different things. How did it affect or change relationships with suppliers? How did it affect or change relationships with employees? And what principles did you identify during those moments?
Yeah.
And I was recording one of my stories because we're writing a book on this right now. I was recording one of my stories yesterday after about 20 minutes. Um, actually 20, turns out to be 27 minutes on one story. And when I originally told you that particular story, it probably took me 5, 7 minutes. And the reason I like to tell things multiple times is because new information usually comes to light for me. I make new connections the second or third time I
Mhm.
touch something rather than the first time, right? So the first time it's a primer. It's like, hey, I'm just going to throw this out here, but this is not the end goal. And it's a bit of a test. Um, the part of that test is to figure out what resonates with the audience and then get feedback from the audience to figure out how to let my subconscious. I don't do this consciously. I've at times done it consciously, but I usually just let these things sit now and let my mind just kind of soak in new information, and then go back uh, to the topic and answer all these questions. What I discovered um, in this kind of sitting and settling process with that particular story is I did come up with I remembered new information. It's new to me. It's old. It's old, but it's new to me.
Yes.
Because I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. That thing happened.
Mhm.
And the reason that happened to me was instead of the first time when I just kind of told you this story without the question, as I went through the question, when I came to the question, how did it affect or change relationships with suppliers? I was like, oh, that's right. When the situation was going on with previous business partner, our suppliers knew this thing was going on too. And they changed how they interacted with us based on who was interacting with them. So they changed how they're interacting with the company based on one employee that was there who was sort of dictating things. And this weirdness, this touch point really did affect our relationships with suppliers. And the other question, how did it affect or change relationships with employees? Information came up around that as well. And so back to your point of if you want better answers, you have to have better questions. Getting really granular with our questions, I think, is an opportunity to expose new information to ourselves and also to other people. And you won't get all the information the first time. It's just not possible. You're only going to get more information the second or third time. So don't be afraid to just plow headlong into sharing your story
Mhm.
because you're going to learn information from that. Somebody else is where you're at right now or where you have been. And so your audience is going to get value from it, but then go back through and really break down all sides of that story. Look at it from all angles because the complete value, a more complete value is found when we look at all sides. Uh, so that the process for this inventory is find your question or find uh, your, in this case, find your stories, tell them to somebody, come back through with the writing process or the question, write the answers to the questions, or in my case, I did recording, but that's going to break it down even further. which will provide even more value. And you actually, I think sometimes you'll find the pivotal thing that matters now that you can really extract. And that's the exercise that we're on. We're not just doing this for giggles. We're doing it to extract pivotal stories and principles and how those principles were, how they played out in an organization.
Yeah. Just to tag on, to piggyback onto that, another thing that came up for me as I was doing this was because of the generosity and spending problems that I had, and because of the difficulties I've had with traction, meaning, getting a consistent and gradually growing stream of predictable revenue that leads to, you know, adequate compensation for me personally as a business owner, which is important. I had known this quote for years, so it's nothing new or I'm the first person to hear this. It's just I knew the quote, but I didn't really understand it. And the quote actually came from Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations, famous founding document of the American free market system. And one of the points he made in that book was there's no true capitalism unless both parties benefit. And I've come to learn that that's true in the kingdom of God as well. There is no favorable outcome that God smiles upon where one person wins and another person loses, at least in terms of economic interaction. In other words, he is pleased when we are preoccupied with serving and meeting each other's needs. If in the case of my pest control company, right? If my needs are that we don't want scorpions and rattlesnakes and other pests in and around our property. And the pest control needs are they need to make money. So there's a free and fair exchange there. But if I get my yard free of rattlesnakes and scorpions and my pest control company doesn't get their invoice paid, it's not a meaningful exchange. Okay. There's your philosophical background. And of course, we don't do philosophy on the Thinker Growth Tuesday workshop. We never have, we never will. But all of that brought to bear on my own situation. I suddenly realized, we are big on purpose. We are big on intentionality. We're big on messages that matter. I mean, that's our branding at Emissary. And yet, this phrase came to me out of nowhere. Where there is no profit, there is no purpose. I said that. There's going to be some, that sounds kind of harsh. Well, it does until you've exhausted your energy and resources trying to fulfill someone else's purpose and you haven't been paid. And I've done that, which is why I won't do it again, because it's not purposeful. It actually is the antithesis of purpose. Because in the process, right, and you can go back to the scriptures and you can find this, right? Do not muzzle an ox while it's treading out the grain. And Paul even points out, do you think Moses was really talking about oxen? Or is it a useful analogy for you to understand the ox who provides the strength and the labor to tread out the grain needs to eat while he's doing it?
Right. The answer is that if you do it for your ox, why would you do it for a person?
Exactly. And so I was going through this questionnaire and I suddenly realized where there is no profit, there is no purpose. And I don't care whether you're working in a for-profit or a not-for-profit sector, right? Both of them run on the same currency, money.
Well, and I want to dig in here a little bit because I like that saying that where there's no profit, there is no purpose. The purpose for the profit really is the question. What is the profitability? It's not if we look at a for-profit business versus a not-for-profit, for-profit business is for compensation, money. Your We're here to measure our results in money.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately what an organization does. It's the technical definition of a corporation. It's designed to create value for its shareholders. That value is money. The fact a corporation that does not create value for its shareholders, or if a leader of an organization does not create value for shareholders, he can be sued because he's not actually working towards the purpose of what a corporation is.
Fiduciary
Yeah.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. So the not for profit, the currency is something different. The impact is really what's being measured,
Mm-hmm.
which requires money. It requires other things too. So there are different resources that might be brought to bear in a not for profit for a particular purpose, which is the impact. Now, here's why I say that. I spent some time in doing some like world missions work a number of years ago, 2015-ish ever. And I was involved in a mentorship group that we met in Dallas every 6 months or 2 years. The idea was that by bringing these different churches together, which had mission budgets anywhere from $0 budgeted and everything's, free will offering to million plus, mission budget.
Mm-hmm.
We met with the goal I should plug this, it's a group called Leadership Network, created by Bob Buford years ago. The stated goal was to get twice the results in half the time. Um, as we met, we would read people's books and have the author, on a video screen, and he'd come in and answer questions. And one of the things that they talked about was an author, and I don't remember his name. I think he wrote a book called When Helping Hurts. The point, or one of the points in that book, was that sometimes we deal with a certain currency that the group we're trying to assist does not deal in, and we actually do more harm than good. And so it's important to know, I think, what is the profit we're looking for in any given situation, which allows us, I think, sometimes to be more creative in how we solve our problems and also make new connections in ways that we might not have normally thought of. So that, let's say in a not-for-profit scenario, there are ways to assist or ways to get support that are not money. And do you measure when you go help that not-for-profit, or you are that not-for-profit, how are you measuring whether you're making a difference in the world, whether you're on purpose or whether you're off purpose? So back to your point of where there's no profit, there's no purpose. Sometimes not-for-profit are not measuring their impact. They're simply collecting money, simply doing stuff, but the money is not the issue. Oh, great. You collect all sorts of money. That wasn't what you're supposed to be doing anyhow, because, shipping money off to some place is not necessarily the solution. It could be doing more harm than good. Instead, what impact are you making? Measure the impact, report on the impact, just as a business or a corporation would report on its financials. We have an impact report, and a lot of more larger not-for-profits do this. They're in some ways required to, but measure the impact to figure out whether you're on purpose or not, or whether you're just doing busy work. And if you're doing busy work, you evaluate maybe the value of your own time and energy and stop doing busy work.
Yeah, there were
That was a lot. I feel like I was just brain dumping there.
No, but I mean, it's good to add context there, because what I wouldn't want is to get into a frame of mind where what I say is, I only do things for money, because that's not true either, right? But what I won't do is things where there's no profit to me, because then it's not a reciprocal relationship. It's a one-way street. So is the profit always a dollar figure? No. But there must be a profit. There must be a return. For example, if you're mentoring somebody and they ignore everything you say, and they don't follow your advice, and they don't listen to you, and they argue, and then it's not a profitable relationship. It's like talking to the wall. Um, Only the wall is less argumentative, right? And so it's there you need to be able to see some signs that you're breaking through to someone, and they're following your advice, and they are becoming better as a result of the energy you're investing in them. And for that to happen, I think one of the prerequisites needs to be that the mentee on some level can be educated to understand that you can't just lean endlessly on people for their advice or their attention or their time if you're not willing to do anything in return. And that doesn't always mean, I mean, it can mean a variety of things. It can mean helping them with stuff around their house or watching their kids or, you know, uh, using the skills that you do have that you are good at to benefit them. So there doesn't have to be any dollars exchanged so much as there has to be a willingness to recognize that in every situation, even the ones where you think I'm getting advice from the guy who doesn't need anything. That's not the case. Everybody needs something, and it behooves you to find out what that is and to do your best to meet that need. So, yeah, I mean, back to the thing I arrived at, the thought that I arrived at. In the specific case of our business, there has to be an incentive of some kind to get me off the sideline. There has to be a reward that I can sense is achievable and worthwhile pursuing. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit. I've got up and done a song and dance enough times for people who are willing to take what I do, but there's no reward in it. So I'm not going to do that anymore.
Another thought that connects it uh, with me as we're discussing this idea of purpose is that everyone needs purpose, and purposelessness leads to idleness and squandering of resources, particularly time and energy. I was having a conversation the other night about friends. How certain friends have certain ways of dealing. We were just simply taking a walk and discussing certain friends, and I was asked, hey, you haven't talked to them I was like, yeah, I have not. We were going to get together, and 5 times the individual canceled. One time forgot. One time, oh my gosh, something came up with this. Something came up. Something's always come up. Or I've got an early morning. Okay, fine. You know what? After about 5 times, I was like, I'm never calling again. And because while this is all going on, at the same time, this individual sometimes calls for just help or for stuff that's really stuff going on, relationship upheaval and whatnot. And, I always take the call, always answer the question, always walk the road. And I got to the point where I was like, you're just taking from me now. In addition, you're asking my advice for things which are relatively clear. You agree to them, and then you do the opposite. You do the thing that's bad for you. Well, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't need this. And, no knock on the individual, whatever. Everybody's got a thing. But I decided that, the purpose in that relationship had maybe run its course.
Mm-hmm.
That, the that my purpose in that was being squandered a bit and not respected. And I have other things to do with my time. I have people who do want to hang out with me. And when they ask, what they should do or whatever, whether we just have just a generic conversation, um, it's reciprocal in nature, and they take whatever they are getting or needing and they do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just struck me that sometimes this idea of purpose, when people don't live on a certain purpose, they tend to be a little bit more wishy-washy,
Mm-hmm.
non-committal, uh, just kind of flowing with things, no particular destination in mind. And it shows throughout the rest of their lives too. And so like this individual, if we did get together, we'd probably just be doing stupid things that I don't have an interest in doing.
Yep.
And I never really did, even when I was younger. And, well, not stupid things, just, goofing off. And I don't have
Sure.
time for that. There's nothing in my brain that's like, yeah, let's engage with just sitting here and laughing, over nothing. Or when watching another round of, some TV show. I don't know
Sure.
things. So I've sort of, in my life at least, I've started to be subconscious. I think it started subconsciously, but it's unconscious. This rejection of purposelessness. And I'm not saying that I'm operating on some, amazing purpose. I after this call, I'm going to go, put on my Superman costume and fly through the clouds for a while. There's nothing like that, but it is a conscious effort, and I reject things. I just rejected somebody this morning. Well, I didn't reject them. I corrected it. And I was like, in this space, the only reason I'm sitting here in this space is to spend time. And if you don't want to spend time with me, don't be in this space.
Yeah.
Because I can be alone. Totally fine.
Mhm.
And it was just this idea of, well, we can just be purposeless, which I don't have any intention of being. I'd like to be purposeful. And if two people are going to be together, then let's make a conscious connection around it. And maybe it's my age, or maybe it's a bad burrito, but I go in and out of thinking that that's a bigger deal than, and I goof off. I goof off too. I feel like I'm painting a picture as though I'm always on target. I'm not I'm not, but I at least let my hair down. I think purposefully. I'm like, okay, now it's the
Yeah.
time we're going to let go and ignore the rest of the world.
You have moved on from, you know, the way I think all of it, particularly men, right, are when we're in our childhood and teens and early 20s. Um, but a lot of us don't get much further than that in terms of recognizing that there's more to life than beer and cars and women and what the average 16 to 25-year-old male thinks about. Uh, once you do that, you once I did, once I did it, I've done it actually a couple times because I had to realize after I left the military, I have not turned my back or told my buddies from combat, go screw yourself or anything like that. But I realized pursuing relationships with them based on what I hear them talk about and what they post on social media about what they're getting into is a road to nowhere for me. It's not that I can't say hi to them. It's not that I would be rude to them. It's not that I would not stop what I'm doing if they called up and needed something. It's just that I'm not going to apply energy in that direction. And there are relationships or connections, that I've had in the past where the discussion would be around the good old times in high school. And that's fun for about 5 to 10 minutes, which is more than adequate to do over Facebook Instant Messenger or That's not the kind of person, I shouldn't say that, but it's not the kind of topic of conversation that I would care to spend an entire afternoon or an entire day hashing. It's only so many memories you got from those days. A lot of them are bad and painful and not worth revisiting, unless it's for the purpose of healing and finding the way forward. And I just, I had to make a choice um, with what I do with my time. Again, going back to this thing that where there's no profit, there's no purpose. Yeah, I like to yuck it up about what we did when we were 17 years old. I know that's fun. I have those flashbacks and all that kind of stuff. It's a reminder not to become arrogant and think that I don't have my own skeleton closet type of thing, right? But it's not. There's no profit in going over that ad nauseum, because I've had this happen, right? You talk with somebody that you were friends with in high school, and you get to the end of the yucks over the memories, and then so you realize I got nothing else to talk about with this person. They're not on the path that I'm on. And so yeah, it's again, even here we're not talking about exchanging money. We're talking, is there profit in this conversation? No. No, there isn't. There's shared history. Okay. I acknowledge that. I'm over that in about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'm back on purpose, because I lived without purpose. That was my companion in living without purpose. I know where that leads. I'm not going back that way. And I think, if you spend enough time thinking about this without making the thought itself your aim, as Rudyard Kipling would say, and instead you say, okay, well then now I've got a very good rule by which to judge at least a majority of the situations that I come in contact with, whether they're economic or otherwise. What's the profit in having this conversation? What's the profit in going and helping that person? What's the profit in going downtown to this networking thing? What's the profit in learning a new hobby for its own sake, right? Sometimes I get that one. It's like, well, my life is so full. uh, I'm not even sure half the time if should I be learning to woodwork or, you know, um,
Well, but let's touch on that for just a second, because um, I think our communication right now is that's the stage that somehow everything that we have to know the purpose of
mhm,
everything. And I think sometimes if we simply, if we simply know that our purpose is, I just want to do it, it's just, it's fun for me,
mhm.
then I think we can, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I did a TikTok video years ago, that I was walking around, and I used to do these TikToks. Sometimes I still do. Did these TikToks that I don't know, I thought I was being wise, giving some value to the world. And I don't know, I ended up with 6,500 followers, something like that. So maybe I was. But I remember one of them, I was walking around with, it was raining outside. I had my raincoat on, which is like super bright green. Um, and then I also had a big bowl, like a big, not just a normal sized salad bowl, it's like a mixing bowl full of salad. And I wanted to eat my salad in the rain. I wanted to eat my salad while I was walking. That was my whole point. And then it started sprinkling. And I was like, well, crap. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to eat my salad in the rain. And so I did. Went for a walk, ate my salad, did a TikTok video about how I just wanted to do it, and that's okay. It doesn't have to have some glorious purpose in the world.
Yeah.
It was purposeful for me. And that's, you know, uh, like earlier today, I was in the mornings, I try to have coffee, start the day. I usually, you know, sit there in the sun and think and pray. And sometimes I'll journal, or sometimes, if somebody's with me, I'll sit there with them and, start the morning off well. It's a very purposeful time. It doesn't look maybe purposeful. it looks like Jason's just sitting there, eating yogurt or whatever and drinking his cup of coffee. But it's purposeful to connect. It connects me and sets the stage with my life,
Yeah.
the world. It's connecting me. I believe it's an opportunity to connect with God. And if somebody's there with me, I purposefully connect with them. And in that moment to just be like, it's these, it's whoever's with me in this space. That's the
Mhm.
purpose of it. There's nothing beyond that. I don't need anything from anybody. We're not looking to drop truth bombs. We're just looking there to sit and spend time.
Mhm.
And recently somebody pulled out social media in the middle of that space. Look at the video. And I was like, hey, that's interesting, but not right now because here's the only reason I do this. I do this to connect.
Yeah.
So if you want to connect, say, if you don't, that's fine. I'll miss you, but go ahead, do your thing. You're not here though.
Yeah.
And I felt a little bit like, how dare you? You know, why can't people just do what they want to do? It's like, well, because it's not the space. It's not the purpose
Yeah.
of this space. It's a misuse. And it's a misuse of the time and energy that I set aside to do this.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
don't misuse that. Go over there. Use your own time and energy watching, you know, another video. And I admittedly get a little persnickety about it sometimes if people do that. But I think it's just um, I think sometimes we can just do something because we want to. We might discover later, like that coffee thing. I started off doing it because I wanted to. And then I realized, wait a second, I really, really like this. And over the number of years that I've done it and tried to do it, it has become like a refuge.
Mhm.
And now I know the purpose of it and I don't want anybody to muck it up. And so I protect it
Mhm.
because it's valuable to me. So I think that sometimes you can start off not knowing the purpose. The purpose is I want to. And we might discover like sometimes how we dig into these questions, right? We discover something that's deep inside of us. We discover what's actually deep and calling to us that didn't want to call. It didn't want to come up. It didn't want to expose itself. And so the voice came up and said, well, I want to.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot underneath the surface there that's driving it. That tip of the iceberg, if we like the iceberg analogy, the tip of the iceberg, the part that you can see, I want to. Underneath the surface is, oh, I'm looking for connection. I'm looking for growth. I'm looking for peace. I'm looking for, right? When we articulate that, I think we actually can create more value for other people because now they're not just sitting there. They're like, oh my gosh, there is a space. There is somebody else who just wants to sit and connect.
Mhm.
And that I think is part of this life cycle. So maybe winding it back to some of these questions for businesses and individuals, um, sometimes, sometimes well, I would say all the time. There's never been a point in my life where I've been like, man, I have found purpose. I've, it's always like, there's part of it. And then I continue to hunt. I continue the search.
And you'd see
Uh,
it better in hindsight than you do in the present or in the future, right? It's like,
oh yeah.
this is gonna be
Yeah.
my purpose, and then God says, "Oh, really? Let me show you something." Right?
Yeah. And and so in hindsight, as best we can tell, I think it's useful to take inventory periodically. And part of that inventory is asking good questions so we can get good answers, so we can discover what is underneath the surface, what's driving us, what our motivations are, what our hopes are, and what the risks are, the things we don't want to see happen. And when we can, like, I think you mentioned that earlier, when we can articulate those things and give them word, we can give them a definition, we can point them out without the without some sort of language to describe what we see. We can't communicate it.
Yeah. One more story that's sort of beginning to put some meat on the bones for what you're talking about. in my corner of the world. Sometimes the purpose is going to come to you through stuff that feels a little bit obligatory or mundane if you haven't thought about it for a while. And so one of the examples of this is, when we were living in Washington State, my boys played mainly Little League Baseball. And because of just the way I view my responsibility as a parent, even though I was not much of a baseball player, I understand the rules of the game, but I didn't know how to coach much of it. I just volunteered to coach, and I coached for several years, and I actually found myself enjoying it to the extent I could. I was never a big player, not a big fan of the game. It's kind of like one of those things. I go to a game here and there, but I don't follow it. But that had set in motion a tradition. When we got to Arizona and the boys were now into ice hockey, and the facilities are here and they want to play, there was no question in my mind about what role I was going to play in that. And so I volunteered to coach, and they've now played 2 seasons. So in the first season, the head coach had an injury about 3 or 4 games into the season and missed the rest of it, which made me the head coach. And I'd never coached. I played hockey for decades, but I'd never coached a team. And now I'm assistant coaching with another guy on their second season. And I'm watching them start out as, there's always a ragtag bunch. There's guys who can play pretty well, guys who are experienced, and guys who are beginners. And it takes some time to get them together. But what I'm seeing from it is that I desire, in a healthy sense, the connection to be around a group of competitive guys who want to win together. But I don't have to be on the ice doing the winning. I just get to be on the bench making the calls, right? which is actually good, because I probably make fewer mistakes on the bench than I do on the ice as part of a team. I love watching them begin to play for each other and make fewer mistakes. And they do listen to my instructions, because I keep finding different ways to show them what I want until they get it. And then when they get it, they never forget it. And they start playing, and the last 2 games they've played incredibly well on the defensive side. The last game they played better on the offensive side. And I realized through all of this that I do have a deeply competitive side. And that competitive side needs a forum to express itself. And it needs to be around people who share that desire to compete and improve the game we play, how we play it. And I've been blessed in the sense that we've got some talented players who know what they're doing, who are coachable. We've got some journeyman players who are getting better at the game, who are coachable. And we've got some beginners who don't really know what they're doing, but they're coachable. And so I'm just getting a ton of value out of it. And the interesting thing is that it reignited my passion for the game. And so they have this thing called adult skills, which is like a practice/scrimmage, and any adult player can go for it. And now I've started playing in that. And I've had a lot of fun there. And I've found a lot of reignited purpose. I didn't think I would. I thought, well, I know the game, I can coach it. It's my obligation as a father, and all that. But of course, then there's the side benefits of, well, I'm getting to spend way more time with my 2 teenagers than the average father does. They're reaching the age where they don't want to be around me. But they do. They actually want me out there on the ice with them. They want me behind the bench. They look to me. They trust me. They listen to me. I mean, what more could you ask for when you got 2 teenage males living in your house?
Right. Well, I think there's a danger, and also for each of us who has this focus on purpose, in thinking that if it has no purpose for us, it has no purpose for anyone, which
Mm,
is not true, right? So, like your coaching example, the fact that you're spending time with your boys, there's value in that. There's purpose in that. But you don't know the value that it has for them. And like you talk about, you're pretty sure that you kind of know that it's probably meaningful, right? But it might be overwhelmingly meaningful. And they might not even know that
yeah.
until years down the road when they're like, yeah, my dad was, you know, coaching as well. There's a book called The 360-Degree Leader by John Maxwell, which came to my mind, which talked a little bit about what we're talking about in uh, the idea that there's leaders at every stage. We're all a leader in some capacity of ourselves or for people in, in our purview. We don't have to be the person at the quote unquote top,
Yeah.
the person who's in charge. The 360-degree leader suggests that we can lead up to, to, to our leaders. We can help them be better leaders.
Hmm.
The people who are up above us in a hierarchy, if there were a hierarchy. We can also, or must also lead across the people who are our peers, who are at the same level. And then we have to lead down as well to encourage the younger or more immature folks to see something, which back to some of these examples, you're coaching, you have now, been pushed up to a higher level
Hmm.
in respect and responsibility. So there's a little bit more leading down, but sometimes we're leading across, like you and, to your marriage or something.
Hmm.
You're really leading across to this other individual, not down. Uh, and how do you affect change? How do you get other people to see purpose? And in my case, as I gave that idea of the coffee example, it was an example of leadership to, um, oh, other people to respect, to say, hey, this place has value.
Yeah.
This area here, it's actually set apart. You didn't know it because you've never thought about it. You've never given it any thought, but I have. And that's why I created this space.
Yeah.
I didn't explicitly invite you into the space, but I did covertly invite you in to this space. You're in proximity. Now I need you to understand what the parameters of the space are.
Hmm.
Here's the purpose. And because of that purpose, here's the parameter. You don't have to accept them, but it doesn't change that this is the space. And what that does is that actually pulls that other person to a higher, it sounds weird, not really a higher level of consciousness, but a higher level of awareness
Yeah.
about them, their surroundings, what other people are doing. It's actually a process of maturity, I think. And so, um, we're running a button up against the end of our time here, but I think drawing us all the way back to this idea of an inventory. The discovery process that we're talking about are questions that individuals, in this case, founders and their team members can ask that will uncover I don't know how to phrase it, the value, really take the value, extract the value out of stories and their interaction throughout the founder's journey, throughout the company's history. And in doing so, offers the ability to then communicate those stories to other people
Yeah.
up, across, and down to help them mature. Here's why this company operates the way it does. You thought it was by accident because you showed up by accident because you saw a job ad and you thought it might be interesting and now we hired you. That's not the end of the story. I need you to know there's something greater going on in this space that you would have no idea if I didn't take the opportunity to tell you. And I would have no idea had I not looked back and done the work of extracting the real value from that holds or the uh, uncovering, like an archaeologist, right? Uncovering an old civilization.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I thought this was just a part. No, it's not. Indio burial ground. Oh, well, that changes things. And I think there's opportunity for all of us. And not everybody's going to take that. But if you do, there's a tremendous amount of value that can come from it for yourself. And then you can learn how to communicate that to others to bring them along on their individual journeys and on the corporate journey together. And if you have back to I guess the tagline or the foundations of what this community and the workshop are all about. If you have a product, service, or a message that you think is going to change the world, you have to get good at delivering that message. That does require really think thoughtfully and sit in it, soak in it a little bit to figure out why we're doing what we're doing, what's working, what's not working, what are the lessons we could take, how do those lessons affect us, and how do we refine ourselves and each other in the future and take other people with us.
I was thinking of the word essence while you were talking about that. It's like, what is the essence of who we are? Because it's unique. Part of it is unique to each person. There's part of it we share with everybody, right? We're all human beings, but we're also all individuals, and it shows up on a physiological level for us, right? We were having the discussion yesterday about how your system processes coffee versus how my system processes it. Both human beings, but but one of us handles coffee way better than the other one does. So, what is the essence? And it's not this isn't a question that you can answer uh, in 20 seconds of thinking about it. It's going to take time and effort, but it's worth the journey. Because when you understand that essence and you can communicate it and you can share it, there's all sorts of separation and distinction you can create, healthy separation and distinction, which increases the likelihood of attracting more like-minded people into as customers, as employees, as shareholders, as board members, as leadership team, et cetera, et cetera. And what does that do? It produces a stronger set of bonds and agreements and traditions and all of that sort of thing, from which strong cultures are born and last and turn into legacies. So
Good
with all of
point.
that in view,
Yeah. Bring us home, Paul.
with all of that in view, this is the Tuesday workshop in the Thinker Growth community, where, as Jason said, if you have a product or service or message that you believe is going to change the world, you have a responsibility to become good or better at communicating it. And if you want to be a part of this community and take advantage of all the resources and wisdom that we share, go to thinkergrowth.com. Meantime, onward and upward in all of your key categories: your business, your family, your faith, your friendships, your relationships. May they all prosper, even as your soul prospers. My name is Paul Edwards. Jason Todd, my co-host. We'll see you next week.
I'm good. Thanks, Paul.
See you.